Oh,
Look on the
unmute.
lower left, and we have a
Oh,
mute
gotcha.
button.
She's unmuted. All right. What's the first item on the agenda, Ray? Or do we need to take attendance, or what do you need to do?
I've already done attendance. BCA, Board Member Code of Ethics.
Okay, we're gonna do that one first. Okay. So I would just like to maybe speak a minute or so, just because I kind of brought these forward, and I wanted to open it up to a discussion. Because in reviewing the actual code of ethics, the policy, and then looking through the MSBA handbook, there are some, it's confusing. There's some things that would be a little confusing. One of them is, in the code of ethics, we often hear I. In the handbook, it's all the board. So my question to throw out is, how do we communicate when we're wearing different hats, which many of us have, and speaking about the board, possibly, and when would we speak up?
Oh, this connection is rough.
Yeah.
Ellen, you're frozen
Oh,
again.
you're back,
there you
Ellen.
are.
What do you-
You're back.
Okay.
You're back.
Okay. So did you hear what I said?
Yeah. When would we speak up is where we left off.
Okay. When would we speak up as with our own opinion, for example, under number 3 on the Code of Ethics, versus, speaking only as the board? Just some thoughts. These events happen. Ever since I've been on the board, it's a little confusing sometimes to weigh and balance the two different, thank you, now I can see more people, the two different positions. And so I just wanted to throw it out and see what other people think. Trevor, is Trevor there? No.
Hi, Ellen.
Trevor,
I'm here.
you are Trevor. Okay, so you and I just briefly referred to possibly some of this could come as part of the in-service for new board members. Just to not make it rigid, but just to clarify and be able to discuss with people, because it has different meanings to different people.
I have a thought, if I may.
Yes.
So my thought is that the Code of Ethics applies to each board member as an individual, but with respect to the actions of the board of directors, we always speak as a group. That's why we identify typically the chair or the chair's designee as the person that should speak for the board, and the rest of us should not be making statements to the press or to reporters or for actions of the board. It's sometimes not always been that way. There have been people who have, for various reasons, perhaps not done that, but it's appropriate that the board speak as a group with one voice, although in our discussions, in our meetings, we can all participate as individuals. When the board takes an action, or when there's a statement about the school district, it comes from the board chair as a speaker for the whole group. So ethics applies to each of us as individuals, but the actions of the board are as one, as opposed to individual. And only one person speaks for the board, and that's the chair or the chair's designee or somebody else if the board so designates.
Okay, so that would be one way. Does anybody else have other ideas? When there might be I'm wondering, when do we ever have a time when we would share our own opinions about issues that either coming to the board or have been at the board.
Well, when we're in meetings, we share
see-
our thoughts. That's okay, because we're taking part in discussion.
Right. But outside, you're saying that we would not speak our own mind. We would just,
Hi, Ellen.
yeah,
If I may, but Bob's exactly right. In meetings, board members can say whatever their opinion is. They have the right to issue that opinion. But once a decision's been made by the board, board members are supposed to abide by the majority decision. Whether they personally disagree or not, they have to respect the decision of the board. That's been said by MSMA. I believe that's in policy. It's just best governing practices at that point.
right.
So we can't have board members undermining board decisions after they've been made, but we certainly don't want to limit any discussion in meetings about the serious issues which we do discuss.
May I add one other point to clarify? I think it's helpful.
Oh,
But I lost you.
I'm trying to unmute him, but I can't for some reason.
It was my mute. I was muted by myself.
Oh, sorry.
So what I'd like to clarify is that we're not like state representatives or elected officials in other respects. Boards of education are unique creatures within the state and government. We're sort of like two or three things at once. We handle grievances. We make policy. We take executive action to expel students. We have a variety of activities that we do, and it's because of our special nature that we're agents of the state and not of the towns per se that we represent. We're agents of the state, and so we have to have that a different collective. And I think there's probably a better way to say what I just said, but maybe Trevor or the superintendent has something to clarify what that is. That we're agents of the state. We're not like a state representative who can vote their own mind and speak they're kind of like semi-independent, even if they're in a party. A board is a different type of group.
Okay. Does anybody have anything else to add or ask? Okay.
So Ellen, do you feel like in the board training that wasn't made clear or that people aren't following the code of ethics? I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
A little of both.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's not just now. It's I've seen it happen, and so I was looking through the policy and then the handbook, and again we did have the workshop with Eileen.
Right.
And then so sometimes events happen, and people speak their own mind, and so I just really wanted to bring it forward. I think it has been complicated, and again, under the social media guidelines, it says clarify that you are communicating as an individual member of the board and not an official district spokesperson.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's open to kind of a broad interpretation. So if then that just means, when would you do that? Do you know what I'm saying? See, that's a conflict, I think. If you're expressing as an individual member in social media, when would that be something we would do? I can't hear you, Mr.
But Deacon, you're muted.
Yeah, we all have privacy rights, freedom of speech under the federal constitution and such, but, so I can express my personal views, but I don't speak for the board. So if I just need to make it clear, for example, if I'm involved with another group I'm involved with, like Standish Food Pantry, uh, I should make it clear that I'm speaking as a member of the public or Standish Food Pantry, and not as a member of the board. It's a little bit hard for the public to say you're wearing a different hat, but I shouldn't, for example, use my public email for food pantry business. And that's one of the ways you do that, is to distinguish that I'm acting as a board member or something else. If I'm acting for the Standish Food Pantry, I generally should use my private email or the Standish Food Pantry email. It's generally one of the ways you might try to distinguish all that.
So I don't want to belabor it beyond
Yeah,
the point.
Ellen,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt. If I could just add in here one more point. I mean, I do agree that in the past, our training on this issue and at least a review of the policy as a board has been lax. And that's something, if I'm chair next year, I'd like to improve upon. If whoever's chair next year, hopefully that's something that they'll bring up in training for next year as well. But to Bob's point, I mean, board members do have an individual right to say essentially what they want under the Constitution, but they just need to make sure they're not doing it as a board member on behalf of the board. Only the chair or a designee of the board or the chair can make comments on behalf of the board and the district as a whole.
Right. I know what you're saying. I'm just trying to operationalize it.
Right. No, and I understand that it's difficult, of course, to operationalize a code of ethics, but certainly don't disagree with you, and certainly open to any suggestions anyone has on how we might do that.
I mean, the fact is, thinking about this, like, there's no way to 100% separate your personal life from your professional life in social media, because if people know you hold that position, even if you're speaking on behalf of yourself and no one else, it's still, I think that's true for any professional. All professionals and all members of all committees have to keep that in mind when they're posting opinions on social media, that it might reflect poorly on the groups that you belong to. And that's an ethical decision people have to make.
Mhm. Okay. I think those are my points. If anyone has other ideas. No?
The board has a responsibility to self-discipline as well. So if the board thinks somebody's out of line, the board has a role to play to say that somebody is out of line, and it can be raised through the board.
Mm-hmm.
To that point, Bob, and I last year, I had tried to get Alan to put something on the agenda on this policy to add in a clause about self-discipline of the board that would establish a mechanism to investigate complaints. Maybe that's something we need to discuss further. Alan didn't think so at the time, but since we're talking about this, maybe that merits further discussion, but that's up to you, Ellen.
Well, that's where my thought just went, actually, because when Mr. Deacon said, if something is out of line, you would report it. Well, my thought was, what would the procedure for that be? Do we have one? That's pretty heavy. I mean, my professional association does. There's a specific committee and group of people who to whom you send your concerns. We don't have that mechanism. Do we? I should ask. What would be the mechanism for that? go to the chair.
Go to the chair, and if the chair is itself the focus of the problem, then you have to raise it through the board when they hold their
Oh,
meetings,
the co-chair.
or the co-chair,
So,
or the,
if-
you know,
If I could, on that point, what I had suggested to Alan last year was, if it is a member of the board, then the chair would establish a 3-member ad hoc committee to investigate the complaint. If the complaint's against the chair, then the vice chair would establish the same committee to investigate any complaints against the chair, and it completely removes the chair from any process in appointing members or influencing their decision.
does Robert's rules have any stuff to say about something like that? I don't recall anything.
I'm not sure, but it's certainly something worthy looking into.
I'm okay with that type of thing, that structure. But if there was something informative in Robert's rules, I might look to that just to verify what a good process might be.
Sure. I mean, the only thing I'm worried about is I know, I'm not saying anything about this board. I think we have a phenomenal board right now, but I know when boards pass, there have been tension between board members, and I just don't want to have this turn into, you know, a way to be vindictive against board members and get them tied into some investigation when no breach of ethics actually occurred.
Yeah,
Right. That's why I think you have to be very careful, right? It's a very serious issue. All right.
Right, and your other challenge you have is that, you know, so you could raise the issue and try to establish clarity, but beyond that, you really don't have any other mechanism to do anything to discipline. Like, you don't have a structure for that. You can call it out and discuss it and talk about ethics and expectations, all those other things, but beyond that, you really don't have any more leverage than that
No.
with another member, regardless of the process that you choose to follow.
I remember past discussions where we talked about that some of the towns had no recall procedure, for example,
Right.
and so that if you were to call out a board member, there in essence there really was no way to discipline them. And I'm not sure if our new structure makes that easier or not.
Represents the whole district. I don't know. All right, we'll, okay, so we would then make okay. Would we make a motion to bring the policy forward again to perhaps add on, or to have someone look through Robert's rules? Could I have someone maybe make a
Well,
motion?
what you could do is you could just leave it on for the next agenda, and having had the opportunity to review Robert's rules to see if there's anything in there in place that you would have a recommendation for the board to approve or whatever, but at least give you time to look at Robert's rules to see if there are guidelines on that.
I support that.
What policy we talking about? BCA?
Yeah,
Bring that one back?
bring it back to policy after they get a chance to look at Robert's rules.
And who's looking at Robert rules?
I will. I'll take responsibility for that.
If Trevor has any thoughts, he can share it with Ellen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll look as well, see if I find anything. Share it with you, Ellen, if I do.
Okay, great. Even what you had brought forward to Mr. Doobie would be fine. You know, we could look at that too.
Yep, no, I'll certainly share that language with you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Can you share
Of
it with
course.
you, Trevor?
Oh,
Yeah, I'll send it to you too, Ray.
Thank you.
okay. Do I need to vote on that? Are
No,
we okay?
no, but just let me catch up with you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at my notes. The next one is similar.
Okay. So we've covered BEB, right? In that whole discussion?
Well, I was going to say, actually, it's very similar, unless someone else has a different, a different piece that they would like to add, because they dovetail together a bit. Okay, all right.
Right, so your next policy, Ellen, is BG, school board policy. And this
Okay.
is just the 5-year review cycle, and MSMA did not have any sample policy. So this was reviewed last June 1st on 2015.
Mhm.
So it's up to you if you guys saw anything you need to change. If not, we can just mark it as reviewed. I don't know if everybody looked it over before the meeting.
I'll put it up.
School board policy, BG.
Did you say there are no recommended changes?
There isn't even a sample policy for this.
Okay.
All they have is, they have the process of how to do policy. She said creating policies is up to the individual district, so there is no sample.
It seemed pretty straightforward to me.
Yeah. Are we all set? Where did Ellen go?
Looks like we lost her again. It's tough when we slip in and out of quorum here.
I know.
I know.
I mean, as vice chair, I would recommend if Bob doesn't have anything that we can move forward, but without quorum, I don't think I can do that.
Well, why don't you guys, while she's not here, look at the process. It's BGR, because the only thing that was different from the sample they sent me is on page 2, there's a paragraph under E that can be added, but doesn't have, oh, she's back for BG.
It said my internet comes and goes. I'm sorry. Oh,
So
Right.
Ellen, we
Yes.
need to, you guys want to make a motion to,
You don't have to if we're not doing anything.
we're not doing anything with that one?
There's no changes being made. I just mark it as reviewed and send it to the board as an FYI.
okay.
I think you only make a motion if we're going to change something.
Change it. Okay. So BG,
If
you're
it's a
is all
substantive
set.
change. So we're all set with that one?
All set with me.
All set with me too.
Okay, so BGR, which is the procedure for that policy. If you
Yeah.
look on page 2, at the very bottom, they had, on the sample, they had, all the way at the bottom, they had that subsection E.
Yes.
So if you want that, then I'll add it in. If you don't, I won't.
I mean, I saw it aligns with what we have in the other policy. We have a,
Mhm.
a bullet line about the superintendent or someone providing access. So, I mean, I'm fine
Mhm.
with it. It makes for a nice parallel.
Okay.
We've already been, I mean, all the board policies are there for the public to look at online already. Correct?
Well, I think that's what it's saying, where we'll post them when we adopt it. So
I think
up
it's
to you.
also just clarifying that you're not doing the old paper binders like the old days where everybody got a 3-ring binder type of thing.
Right.
I'm fine with adding E. It's okay.
Okay, now, this is just procedure. You can make a motion to add it, but it does not need to go for a first or second reading. So it's up to you if you want to actually make a motion.
Hang on a second.
I'm not sure that it's really a change because we've already always posted all
Right.
policies online in the past. So
And yeah.
it's not a new thing.
No, and it's just a process. So those don't even go for first and second reading.
Yeah, so
Okay, Ray,
Yes?
in the BG, it talks about the superintendent or designee will be responsible for making policies.
Yeah,
It doesn't say that in this one. Not that it might just, it just says superintendent through this whole thing.
which one? BGR
BGR.
talks about the superintendent, not the designees.
Yeah, and the other, in BG has superintendent / designee.
It says or designee in D
Where? Okay, let me go back to that.
D
in the
has-
rules. I'm in the rules right now, the one that's on the screen.
Oh, shoot.
So D says superintendent or designee.
The beginning, I read the beginning of it. It just said superintendent, superintendent, superintendent. As long as it has designee in it, that's fine. It's just connected. It's just not.
Okay, so, yeah, 2, it just says policy committee and the superintendent.
So like on number 4 or something.
Very easily go in there and add the word designee.
Right.
Not a big deal, and it's just a procedure. So
It's just a
again,
procedure, yeah.
it doesn't have to go anywhere. So I'll just make a note to look for a superintendent.
And designee, because under number 1, it just says superintendent. Number
Yeah.
2, superintendent.
But number 1
number
is
3
saying or members of the public. So
Yeah.
basically it's saying anybody could submit a suggestion.
Right. Number 4, individual
Well, they
policies.
can.
Are the, yeah.
You know, they
But
submit this.
number 3 does include designee.
Yeah, number 3 does, yeah.
Okay, so I'll just go ahead and add that.
Make it connect, yeah. Just
Yeah,
make it,
consistent. All
Yeah.
right, let me put that in the notes.
okay.
All right.
Okay. The next one is BGD, Board Adoption and Revision. Again, there was no sample from the MSMA. Again, this is just a 5-year review. It was done on June 1st, 2015.
That was the form.
Nope, BGD is, talks about
Oh.
adoption of procedures.
Hold on.
Okay. Sorry.
There you
Because
go.
procedures are not really, not supposed to be made by the policy committee. They're made by administrators.
Oh,
According to the MSMA, procedures don't belong in a policy book. We've always kept them there so they were right behind the policy. So we knew where they were, but they're not actually adopted by the board. Policies on procedures are not adopted.
no.
We keep them in the book just so that they're side by side, so they're easy to reference.
Okay. But we don't, right.
They don't get voted on, so they're not actually part of policy.
But it's okay if we keep them together.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, that's what we've always done, and it's easier for the public and for an administrator, just to see the policy and then say, oh, there's a procedure.
Mhm. Okay. I'm fine with it.
Okay, I'll mark it as reviewed, and it will just be an FYI because we're not making any changes.
okay,
Okay, the next one is BIB, Board Member Development Opportunities.
Right. Oh,
I did get a sample policy of this from the MSMA, and it was identical to ours.
oh,
And again, this one was just reviewed again on June 1st, 2015. So we're very current with our 5-year review process. And before we had policies 20 years old. So we're doing a good job keeping this book now current.
thank you, Ray.
Yeah, You have
That's,
to keep up on that when Ray retires.
well, I've got a little list of what's next, so it's
Okay.
easy
Oh,
to
thank
do now.
Well,
There's still a few in the, there's a couple that are old, but Paul knows what they are, and a couple of them are still in the financial section. There's only a few left in that section, but there's still some in that section. So
Thank
anyway,
you.
so you need to look at, if this looks okay with you, we can do the same thing.
Yeah, it looks fine to me, but
I'm okay.
you're okay? Okay, I'm okay too. Erica?
I'm good.
Okay.
5-year review again, CHD, administration in the absence of policy. Very simple, 2 sentences, the same as the sample that was given to me. Again, last review, June 1, 2015.
Mr. Penn, I think.
Yeah, what we do.
That's what you do, right?
Yep, exactly.
All right.
Looks good.
Very good.
Okay, all right, now the last one is CM, School District Annual Report. Again, it was the same. The only thing that's different is I had to update a cross-reference. You'll see it in bold. There's another section added.
That's right. Okay.
If you don't change anything else, do you need this to go to first reading? Do you consider this substantive? Just changing a legal reference. If it's not a substantive change, it does not need to go for first or second reading.
I don't think it is. If someone else knows that.
What's the legal reference that's added?
As you can see, the end of the legal reference, they've added another section, the 4502. The subsection 1055 was there already, and they added 4502.
I'm not familiar with 4502, I'm sorry.
Me either, but
We can,
that's
can check.
all. That's the only change.
we
They've
can,
updated the reference.
we can look that up for, take 2 seconds, hang on.
Okay. I was gonna say, it didn't change any of the wording though?
No,
No.
doesn't change
So-
anything in the policy.
Okay. But
Paragraph 6, if you're looking, Paul.
Yeah. Only says, annual report on comprehensive education plan. There's an annual report on comprehensive, the superintendent shall make an annual report of progress on the comprehensive education plan developed, pursuant to subsection 1 to the citizens of the school. So it's our reports that we do, and we do our annual, we always do our goals reports from the school.
yes.
Superintendent, and the commissioner on an annual basis. Yeah.
Mhm. Great.
So the question is that a substantive change or just a,
I
I
think
don't
it's
think-
I
clarification.
don't think it's a change because the statute has not changed.
Right. Statute hasn't changed. It's just, they just added that to it.
All right, and I'll just add that. We'll mark it as reviewed.
Okay, thank
And
you.
that's all that was on the agenda.
Okay. Does anybody have anything else?
I'm good.
I'm good.
You're good? All right.
Okay, so how much time do you think I should add for that discussion item again for BCA, Board Member Code of Ethics? Do you think we'll need another 15 minutes?
Yeah, well, I don't know. It depends what we find in Robert's rules, but I would probably, yeah. I
I'll
put 15, Matt. Put 15 in there for it.
I'll put that in there.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, then we have it in case we
Right.
need it.
Yeah.
Great.
so if there's nothing
Thank
else,
you.
we need a motion to adjourn.
I move to
So-
adjourn.
I second that motion.
Favor? Aye.
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 Okay, thank you very much.
See you shortly.
Thank
See
you.
you.
That's
Thank
it.
you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
bye-bye.